My whole family told me I was a waste of space because I decided to marry a struggling artist. That's right, he didn't have a dollar to his name, and he lived in his car, moved into my apartment just to have a place to stay, and well, my father and mother said he was no more than a bum. Well, guess what? I guess the joke's on them, because now, a few years later, he's filthy rich. I never thought I'd be one of those people writing here, but hey, I guess there's a first time for everything. At least this is a throwaway account because I don't want this coming back to me. I'm just writing this because I needed a place where I could vent and also get some advice on how I handled the situation. It's going to be long, but trust me, it's definitely worth the read on this one. So let me give you guys some context. I'm 30, female. I've been married to my artist husband for 5 years now. He was a struggling artist when we first met, but I didn't care about that. He's kind, humble, generous, that's what I fell for. However, my parents and older sister did not like him. They felt that he was just a loser who would never make it in life. My older sister actually told me to my face that if I stayed with him, I would end up living on the streets. Now, my family isn't wealthy, but my parents have always wanted the luxurious, wealthy lifestyle, and this type of mentality rubbed off on my older sister, and she is just as obsessed with money as they are, unfortunately. It is only me and my younger sister who don't really care about money. I mean, I've always told myself that as long as I have a shelter, food, water, and electricity, then I'm good. Everything else is just a luxury. So due to my husband being a broke, struggling artist, my parents and sister never approved of him. So when I finally told them that they were getting married, they threatened to cut all contact with me, which at the time I did not believe that they would do. I thought they were just bluffing, and when it was the day of the wedding, my family did not show up, and I received an email telling me that I should never contact them ever again. They blocked my number and even blocked all of the social media. It's been 5 years since I've last saw or even spoken to them. My younger sister did try to reach out to me, but eventually, the communication between us died out, and I just figured that it was probably because of my parents. Anyways, let's get to the reason why I'm writing this today. It was a sunny day, and it was busy in the garden. So my broke, struggling artist husband is now a wealthy, successful artist whose paintings sell for anything between, well, $100,000 and the last one appraised at $2 million. Well, they sell over $1 million on a really good day at least, and if the painting is a masterpiece. We stayed in a very beautiful mansion that's close to the beach, and things haven't always been easy, but we're grateful to be in a better place that we are now. After spending some time in the garden, I decided to head to my study just so I could check my emails. Once I opened my laptop and I read over the emails, I noticed an email address that I was not familiar with, so I clicked on it and it was a long message. I then got the shock of my life. This was an email from my parents, specifically my mother. The email's basically her saying that it's been so long since they last saw me, and that she's writing this email because she feels terrible about the way they treated me and my husband. She also wrote that it was never their intention to treat my husband the way they did. It's just that they were scared of seeing us suffer. I kind of understood because when they met my husband, he was living in his car until he moved in with my apartment. She lastly wrote that they would love for us to fix things and reconcile if we're willing. I stared at the email for at least 10 minutes, not knowing how to feel, and a part of me really misses them, but another part of me still had resentment towards them. I mean, they intentionally missed my wedding and cut me off with no hesitation. I decided that I would first talk to my husband about it. Once my husband, Philip, got home from his art gallery, I told him about the email and he raised his eyebrows and shook his head. He told me that he finds it suspicious that my family all of a sudden wants to reconcile and fix things. He emphasized that it's been like 5 years since they last spoke, so why had they not contacted me throughout the years? I shrugged my shoulders and told him that I would not be responding to the email just yet. I wanted to sleep on it and see how I feel about everything when I wake up. The next morning, I decided to respond to the email and ask my mother if we could please talk about everything over the phone. It didn't even take 5 minutes before I got a response. She wrote that she would love to have a phone call with me, and she left her number. I called her later that day, and we had a heart-to-heart conversation. She apologized for everything and even broke down in tears while we were talking, which touched my heart because my mother hardly ever showed emotion or cried. I told her that I forgive her and my family, and that I just wanted us to start over, and she told me that she would love that. Before we ended the call, Mother asked me if it would be possible for them to come to visit us because it has been years since they last saw me. I was so hesitant about having them over, but I decided to be the big person and agreed that they could come visit me and Philip. She told me that she could not wait to see me, and I told her that I also could not wait to see her. Before we hung up, she asked me if I would not mind paying for their tickets because, well, things have been a bit hard financially. She also promised that my father would pay me back because she knows that things might be hard for us as well. My ego immediately felt bruised, I won't lie. I allowed my ego to get the best of me. I told her I would pay for the tickets and that there would be no need for them to pay back because me and Philip are doing great. We ended the call and I went to my laptop. I noticed my mother had already sent all their details for the tickets without even thinking about it or discussing it with my husband. I booked and paid for their tickets. After I was done, I emailed my mother the tickets and thanked me. My husband was so angry when he found out that I booked and paid for the plane tickets, but what was he really angry about was the fact that I'd invited the same people that had cut me out of our home without discussing it with him. I apologized to him and told him that I just got excited because I had not seen my parents or sister in years. He shook his head, told me that he understood, but he just hoped for my sake that this would go well. Well, I told him that it would go swift, since it was my mother who reached out, and which meant that she was being genuine. He reminded me that my mother has always been manipulative and that I should tread very lightly when it comes to her. I told him that he's negative and that he should try a bit of optimisticness. Oh, how I wish I had listened to my dear husband. He was clearly on to something when he said that to me. Update number 1. My family was arriving today. I was excited but very nervous because I have not seen them in years. I was fetching them from the airport by myself since my husband had an art show, so he would not be back home until late. I decided to drive my luxury car. I really wanted to show my parents and older sister that they were wrong about Philip and rub it in their faces, that we were living the life that they wanted. I arrived at the airport and found them waiting outside. I greeted them and they greeted me back. My younger sister hugged me so tight and told me that she had missed me dearly. My mother also hugged me, which I found weird, but I appreciate it. My father just gave me a nod of appreciation and told me that the car was nice and asked if it was the latest model. I told him that it was, and he nodded in affirmation. We got into the car and headed off to my and Philip's home. My family immediately started complimenting our house once we arrived. I thanked them for their compliments and showed them to their room. I told them that dinner would be at 7 p.m. sharp, and my mother asked if I would mind, cook, and told her that no, our chef would be making all our favorites, don't you worry. My mother glared at me and smiled, which I found a bit odd. She then asked me if we would go somewhere we could talk in private. We headed outside and left everybody inside to relax. We sat on the bench and my mother started apologizing again for everything, and I told her it's okay and that I had forgiven them a long time ago. She starts asking me about my life and how Philip is doing, and I start telling her everything that was going on, and I once started talking about Philip. Her interest piqued. She then asked me how much he earned per month, and I told her that he doesn't have a monthly salary. Everything's dependent on how many paintings he sold. She smiled, told me that she was so proud of Philip, and that she had seen an article about him in one of her favorite magazines. I told her that Philip is in high demand these days, that's true. We continued talking until it was time for dinner, and we were eating dinner when my father brought up how proud of me and Philip he was. I smiled at him and thanked him, of course. My older sister then mentioned how she never knew that artists could make this much money. My mother gave her an icy glare and told her not to be rude. I told my mother that it's okay and that most people underestimate how successful artists can actually be. Philip then arrived and he greeted everybody with a fake smile, of course. My mother immediately got up to hug him. She started telling him how handsome he looked and how much he had changed. And Philip looked over at me confused by my mother's kindness, and my father then started telling him how proud of him he was and that he had always believed in him. My parents were just singing praises to him and his success, which I found very weird. But then I reminded myself that my mother had told me that she wanted all of us to reconcile, and I guess that this was part of it. Even my older sister was being kind to my husband. Everything was going great, and I was glad that I had answered my mother's email. A few days had passed, and I'd been busy with showing my mother and sisters around, while my father was busy bonding with Philip over his artwork. Philip was still skeptical about my family's intentions and was obsessing over trying to figure out what was their motive. I told him to stop overanalyzing things and to just enjoy having them over, because I was certainly enjoying my time with him. I was busy doing some work when my mother and older sister walked into my office with serious looks on their face. I asked them what was wrong, and they ignored. My mother sat down, and my older sister was standing right next to her. I told them that this felt like an interrogation, and they laughed, and my mother coughed to clear her throat, and she looked straight into my eyes. And what she said to me next was absolute nonsense. My mother proceeded to tell me that it was clear as daylight that she and Philip were clearly rolling in money, and that she was disappointed that we never once thought about sending them $1. I reminded her that they had cut off all contact with me, so why would I have bothered to send them anything? My sister then proceeded to tell me that it's clear that I had forgotten that it was our parents who raised us, and that they had sacrificed so much for me. My mother flashed me a smile and proceeded to tell me that it would be nice of me and Philip to give them some money, or at least buy them a mansion as nice as the one that we're living in. I raised my eyebrow and asked her why would we do that. She proceeded to say that it was my duty as a daughter to spoil them, since they have done everything for me. My older sister then added that if my parents had not sent me to college, then I never would have even met Philip. I honestly could not believe that I was hearing and tried my best to keep my composure. I told my mother that me and Philip were not going to be giving them any money, and that we would definitely not buy them a home. I then proceeded to ask her if this was the reason why she had wanted to visit us, so that she could ask for money. She gasped in shock and told me that she would never do such. She added that the reason she had wanted to reconcile was because she had genuinely missed me. I could see the tears in her eyes as she said that. She proceeded to tell me that she felt guilty for cutting me off because now she missed out on 5 years of my life, and she did not want to miss out on any more years, especially because she had read in an article that Philip mentioned that we wanted to start a family, and the one thing she did not want to happen is me having a baby and her not being able to see her little grandchild. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she said this, and it did touch my heart. Even though I was still confused by her asking me for money and also requesting that we buy the family a mansion, I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt because she immediately dropped the topic and did not bring it up again. Update number 2. It's been 2 weeks since my family arrived here at our home, and things have been going so well. My mother never brought up us giving them money again, so that made things even less awkward. I was just glad that she respected my decision to turn down giving them money and buying them a house because my mother doesn't take no for an answer. Me and my younger sister were out shopping when I received a frantic call from Philip telling me that 2 of my paintings were missing from his not-so-for-sale collection. I asked him how is it possible because those paintings were locked up in the storage room at the house and only he had the key. He proceeded to tell me that he borrowed my father the key because he wanted to view the paintings that would not be sold. I froze in absolute fear, and my sister asked me what was wrong. I told her that we had to go, and we immediately rushed back to the house. I found Philip in the storeroom as he showed me which paintings had been stolen. I told him not to worry and that everything would be all right. My younger sister rushed into the storeroom and told us that our parents and sisters weren't there. I looked at her confused because why would she tell us that? I mean, they could be out like they always are, and she proceeds to say, no, the suitcase, the belongings, everything is gone. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up and I started to panic. They had stolen my husband's paintings, and the guilt started to eat me alive because I felt that this was all my fault, and this would have never happened if I had not invited them over to visit. We headed off to the room and searched for any clues. There was absolutely nothing in their room. I could see the hurt in my husband's eyes, and those paintings were sentimental, hence why they were never put up for sale. I tried calling all 3 of them, and none of them answered their phones at all. This was a clear indication that they'd stolen the paintings. My sister proceeded to tell me that she just received a message from my mother. The message stated that my sister was to fly home immediately because they were on their way home with one of my and Philip's cars. I gasped in shock and ran downstairs to the garage to find one of the cars was indeed missing. Why would they do this to me? This is absolute nonsense, and I could not believe that I had actually believed and trusted them. I know that they had done this because they still think that I'm the same kind and sweet girl, but there's no way in hell that I was going to let them get away with what they've done. What they have committed and done was utter betrayal, and I would never forgive them for this. Update number 3. Hey! We arrived at my parents' house with my younger sister. It was a long drive and we got there pretty late. Luckily, the car had a tracker, but also we had my younger sister on my side. We all knew that my parents would not open the door if they knew that it was, well, but my sister had her key on her, so we were able to just walk into the house. My parents are startled by us, and my mother gave my younger sister a death stare and asked us what the hell we're doing here. I told her that I knew that she had stolen Philip's paintings. I was trying to understand why would she betray me like that. She rolled her eyes at me and proceeded to laugh at me with no sympathy for how I felt. She proceeded to tell me that the only reason why she stole the painting was because I'm such a selfish brat who thinks that I'm better than everybody. I looked at her and asked her if she had all of this because I would not give her money. She proceeded to say that she deserves to be wealthy, and that I'm living the lifestyle that was meant for her. She continued to say that she never wanted to reconcile with me. All she wanted was money. My older sister added that this had been their plan all along. She also admitted that they were all going to act nice towards me and Philip until we gave them what they wanted. My father proceeded to say that I was an ungrateful brat who did not deserve happiness. He also told Philip that his paintings were all ugly, and he could not understand why on earth people would buy such a hideous, awful painting. My blood started to boil, and I wished that I could just slap all 3 of them right across the face. That would ruin the plan. My mother then told me that I was useless and that she was disappointed and disgusted to have such a weak daughter like me, who fell for a broke man who just luckily became rich, but that doesn't change the fact that he comes from a family of broke nobodies. I don't know what came over me that night. I slapped my mother right across the face. Philip pulled me back and asked me to calm down and not to stoop to their level. My mother laughed and told us that she felt bad that we have driven all this way for nothing because they have indeed sold the painting this morning and that the money was already in their account. My father proceeded to tell us that they did not need us anymore because the money from the paintings would now give them the lifestyle they deserved. Just as my older sister was about to say something, the police walked in, and they immediately kept quiet. They greeted everybody and only me and Philip, and my younger sister greeted back. My mother asked the officer what the hell they're doing in her house. I smirked and proceeded to inform her that the police were there to arrest them since they stole my vehicle. My mother laughed and told me that we had no evidence of such. One of the officers informed my mother that they had received camera footage of them taking and leaving with the car. The moment he said that, I could see the fear in their eyes. I proceeded to say that it is very unfortunate that we've never mentioned to them that the house is covered with cameras. Obviously, security purposes. My mother's face immediately went white and she was shaking. Philip then told them that one of the cameras caught my father taking out the painting from the storeroom, and that leaving the premises with the paintings meant that he had committed criminal activity. The officer told them that they were being arrested on 2 counts of robbery. My mother starts begging us not to lay charges against them and that they were so sorry and that this wasn't her idea at all. She then pointed at my father and accused him of being the mastermind behind it all. My father started shouting at her and even called her a snitch. The police arrested them and took them away, and we followed them to the station because me and Philip had agreed that we were pressing charges against them. Update number 4. Guys, I'm sorry a few months have passed since that day. I never thought that my family could betray like that. I'd always known that they were money hungry and obsessed with wanting to be wealthy, but never expected that. It turned out that my parents had known for over a year that Philip was a successful artist. It had always been their plan to get their hands on some money. They had never wanted to fix anything between us in reality. All they wanted was the money. Which was very upsetting to hear because I genuinely thought I was going to get my family back, but now I don't even want it. My older sister decided to expose all my parents' planning, and also exposed how they had executed everything to avoid jail time. Once my parents heard about this, they were furious. However, she did succeed because she wasn't charged with anything. She had tried on multiple occasions to reach out to me because she wants to sincerely apologize. I'm not ready to face her, though. Even though she claims that she was being used as our parents' puppet, I still believe that she was in on wanting to get from us. Unfortunately, my parents did not face any jail time either, but they did have to pay a hefty fine, and they have to do a year's worth of community service. They had to use the majority of the money that they got from the painting to pay off both their fines. They've also tried reaching out, but I decided that I do not want anything to do with them. I've survived 5 years without them. I most definitely can survive many, many more without them. The police, unfortunately, were unable to locate the paintings that my parents had sold, which broke my heart because I know how much those paintings meant to Philip. I regret inviting my family over to our home, even though Philip, has forgiven me for bringing them into our house in the first place. I still feel extremely guilty because he had warned me. I'm glad that I got my revenge, though. I have absolutely no regrets for deciding to get my family arrested and laying charges against them. I feel that in this case, the revenge was definitely sweet and worth it. Bad people deserve to have bad things happen. You know what's so crazy about this story? Is the fact that OP's parents literally thought that they were going to get away with a multi-million-dollar painting or whatever the price of it was, and also with the fact that they stole a car and drove it across the country. I mean, this whole story was so wild, absolutely ridiculous, and those parents were as toxic as it comes. But I do have one question for you guys. If you were in OP's position, would you have done the same, pressing charges, or would you have given the parents another chance? Let me know your thoughts about that. Drop it downstairs in our comment section. Guys, my name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories every single day, similar stories and topics to today's video. So if you like today's video, there's 3 things that really help support the channel, and I would appreciate it so much if you do these 3 things. Number 1, subscribe. Number 2, drop a like if you enjoyed the story. And number 3, make sure you leave a comment or an experience that you had of your own. Thank you once again. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.